Welcome, everybody, to Victory Circle Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Wilson. Today, we have our special guest, Jackie Scully. Welcome, Jackie.
Hi, thank you for having me, Jason.
You're welcome. So Jackie is a history and psychology teacher, podcast host of her show, The Teacher Story, and also co-founder of the Teacher Circle LinkedIn group.
Thank you so much for that plug.
You're welcome. When you were a kid, Jackie, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I always was around kids, even as a kid. So all I ever wanted to do is collect people and be around all these other kids. And then that kind of led, and I don't know, I always loved children's curiosity and their complete passion for life and asking lots of questions. I was that type of student in school. I got into a little trouble when I was in elementary school because I talked too much in class and asked too many questions. That was back in the 80s when, I guess you shouldn't do that, but it was kind of always just part of who I was, just being around kids and the joy of learning and asking questions.
And what was your favorite subject in school?
So interesting, being a history and psychology teacher, it was not history right away. It was English. And I had this, and this is where I talk about this. It wasn't really about the subject, it was the teacher. So in sixth grade, I had this fabulous teacher named Mr. Ed Edwards, that was his name. And he also was the director of the high school musicals. And I used to love going to the musicals with my family. And he made the class so interactive. I remember one of the projects, we had to research someone we were interested in, anybody. And we had to pretend to be them and put on almost a mini play. And I chose Leonardo da Vinci. I dressed up like Leonardo da Vinci, and my dad helped me make a mock Mona Lisa. And it's sixth grade, and we had to do a 15-minute presentation, being in character the whole time, and then get questions from the students. And it was so creative, and it pulled me out of my shell. And I fell in love with English, and then I had a great English teacher in seventh grade. And then I started to get into history because I really connected with my dad. My dad's a history buff, and we would have these long, road trips where we would stay up all night when he was driving, talking about history and geography. And then I got into a history class in junior high where we had this Native American project where we could choose any Native American group we wanted to research and then create a whole scrapbook, storybook, if we were interviewing them about their culture, about their history, about the land. And then it was storytelling. And I really liked history from that angle. And that's actually something that got me really into wanting to do more at the higher level history classes in high school. And then I came back around to that later on when I decided in college to major in secondary education and social studies. And I originally was going to go into elementary education because I was love being around little kids. But then, getting into it, I realized you are needing to be an expert in all the core subjects, K through sixth grade. I'm that is a lot. I give it up to elementary school teachers. It is a lot that you have to be certified in.
So Jackie, you've had a really interesting teaching career. You've taught for 17 years in, all different kinds of places as well. You've been in China. How was that experience in China?
So I had this incredible opportunity to teach in China just for a summer. So it was kind of nice to keep my full-time teaching job when I was at this independent school in Delaware. And I came across a woman who taught in the summer camp, and she told me all about it. And I went in 2015, never have taught in another country, never been that far away. It was an 18-hour plane ride to Beijing. And China's very different. And it was at a time where I think relations were a little bit better than they are now between America and China. So I'm glad I had that opportunity then. But I loved it. The teacher I worked alongside was so wonderful, so open, wanted to really learn about the kind of more Americanized teaching strategies, and then bring that into her own teaching. And the students were just so welcoming. And they would give you all these gifts at the end of the time there. They were giving you hugs. They were crying when you left, and they got really close to their teachers. And it was also an opportunity to work alongside teachers from England. So we had an English or British cohort, an American cohort, and then the Chinese teachers. So this is a whole collaboration of teachers from 3 countries And it just expanded my learning and teaching methods so much. And I taught ESL, which was something I haven't taught before. So it was kind of fun to kind of have a different role in teaching than just like high school history for so long. So I'm so glad that I had that opportunity.
Oh, that's phenomenal. So, with the pandemic that happened in 2020, that had, a drastic effect on everybody's career. How did that affect your teaching?
That was very challenging time. And I mean, we're still in a global pandemic, but as far as education goes, we will have pretty much a normal school year this upcoming school year. But starting in March 2020, we had to turn our brick and mortar school into a virtual program in like 4 days. And so Friday, March 13th was the lockdown. Saturday, the educational director called me and she was like, will you be willing to do a workshop on Monday? I'm like, okay. And so, because she knew I did a lot with my website and I've done some things with videos, Flipped Classroom, and I made like 3 videos so that if, teachers wanted to come to a live Zoom workshop or they could watch your video, did that come Monday, doing that. And then I have to learn, I've never done Zoom before, Google Meets and Google Calendar and all of this. And by Wednesday, we had students up and running virtual program. And it was really clunky, but they were in school. I felt fortunate to have that, where a lot of places around, at least in America, they just went home and they sent kids home with books and workbooks, and, teachers maybe posted things on their website and it was not live. So I'm glad we at least had some kinds of interaction on Zoom. And then the following school year, 2020 to 2021, was very challenging because it was hybrid. So we had students at home Zooming into the classroom. You had students in front of you and you had to do both. Like you literally needed to clone yourself. I'm teaching 2 cohorts of students at the same time. Audio issues, like, can you hear me? Can you hear the students in the class? You'd spend like 10-15 minutes just figuring it all out, trying to get the sound right, making sure everyone's on Zoom. Students with kind of, connection issues would fall off and you're like emailing them like, are you okay? Can you get back on? I'll tell you what was a part of the lesson. I mean, I felt manic. Like I just felt, I felt like I was having a nervous, breakdown like for a year. It was just bonkers. And now to look back at it, you're like, but I did that. Like I did it. Like we all did it. And it just shows you how much you can stretch yourself as a person and as an educator and vent and talk about how frustrating it was. But then also to realize now on the other side that you did something that was really challenging. It's unprecedented. No one's taught in this way before.
Right.
And I don't know, like it just shows that teachers, especially the ones that really like wanted to jump in and give it their all, like you could be super adaptable. You could like do almost anything when it's like, I got to do this and I got to do it now for the kids. So there's a lot of takeaways from it too.
Yes, absolutely. So is that where your idea for the teacher circle came from?
So for both the teacher circle and my podcast, The Teacher Story, it came out of the pandemic. It came out of, I think, teachers feeling very burnt out and feeling isolated, right? We were all isolated in the pandemic. Even with connecting on Zoom, we spent less and less time together. There was no collaboration because everything was about like, I just got to do my class, right? And I got to just like get this technology right. And I think teachers felt like they had very little support. And so when I started the podcast, it was really to start to share their stories. Like I wanted to also learn about like, hey, what was it like for you going through the pandemic? What is it like in this other country? Because I've interviewed teachers from all over the world. And then the teacher circle came out of that. And I met 2 other, teachers who wanted to start a support group. And they're like, we have this whole group of people leaving, and rightfully so. People need to leave the profession, do what's right for their family, economically, for their own mental health. I totally understand it. But then we had educators staying in and feeling like all the attention was on all the educators leaving. And then where's the support for those who are like, we're still here. Like we still are in this job and still care about it. So we wanted to create the teacher circle on LinkedIn with Sally Palmer and Hope Blecker, the other founders. and really say, we're here for you. Like, we get it. There are things that are holes in our system and we need to like be solution oriented and work on that together, but we're here to support you. And we're here to share resources and just have a space to like, give support and say, we got your back.
That's wonderful. So how do teachers get involved?
So we just started this at the beginning of August. So it's called the Teacher Circle on LinkedIn. We sent out a poll early on to say, would this be something you'd want to see? And so from the poll, we sent invites to those individuals. Not all of them are teachers. You could be a teacher. You could be someone else in education, administrator, a counselor. You could be higher ed. It doesn't have to just be K through 12. It's also a lot of professionals who are not in education, but they support teachers and they support that there needs to be change in education and support those people working on that. And I think the real, I don't want to call it like a revolution, like we're going to war, but like the real revolution, like the real change in how we see teachers and how we see this work is also people outside of the profession. And I have come across so many people on LinkedIn that are very supportive of what we're doing. And they want to be part of that mission too. They care about this generation. They care about the kids. They care about the teachers. And I think that's when we really build community, when it's not just like, here are just teachers, but all these people who care about this effort, because really education is the foundation of society. I mean, you have to have an educated generation, right? If we're going to have progress and move forward. Yeah. So anyone could just also go on LinkedIn and search the Teacher Circle, and then they can join, and then we will approve you, and then you're part of the membership. And also, it's not just about the founders just giving you information, or like we've shared videos with like our ideas, but anyone can post, anyone can share a question, anyone can share a resource. It's about a community of voices. I would love to learn so much more from other educators or people in the field, and especially from other countries. I think we can learn a lot from each other.
That is awesome. And, I've been a teacher here in Columbia for almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
And, some of the teachers that I know would be, really, really interested in that. So I'm going to send them your way for sure.
Thank you so much. Yes. More the merrier.
Yeah. I would like to be involved too.
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. So this is a good point to segue into educational reform. What would you like to see happen in education?
So I come at this angle from being first a teacher advocate, particularly with so many teachers leaving the profession. At least that's what we're seeing in America. I know it's happening in other countries, but the NEA, the National Education Association, quoted that 55% of teachers will leave the classroom, and we're already seeing major shortages around our country. Some states where they have like emergency hires. It's going to be pretty dire for, I think, the next couple of years. So my first take on education reform is, how do we first increase teacher salary? Teachers get paid very, very small salary in certain parts of our country. And I know that's the situation in some other countries too. We have professionals who have master's degrees, some have doctorate degrees, and in some areas are only getting like started in like $30,000, $40,000, right? Where you have people coming out of college going into some corporate, jobs that they're easily starting 50, 60,000 as a start. And then they get bonuses and move up and advance very quickly.
Right.
So monetarily, it's not sustainable. That's the first thing. We also have to look at, how do we support our teachers, giving them better resources, giving them time to really work on their craft and not just a bunch of duties in school. And we need to somehow have a conversation in society about how we see teachers as other professionals, like putting them up there with other people like doctors and scientists and psychologists and all of that. And again, you have a lot of teachers who have advanced degrees. So, I mean, they're up there, and they have to get certified and take a bunch of different tests that they pay for and have to pass. And in America, you have to have a different certification for every state. So it is a very advanced professional position. And then I would like to get to the heart of, how do we really take care of our kids in a holistic way? We went through the pandemic where I think we were all just consumed by technology, which we needed to be. It was helpful to at least have education in that way. But how do we go and then look at how we take care of everyone's like mental health, maybe strip things down and don't cram more curriculum in or cram more testing in. There's this conversation of we're losing this time, we're losing learning, like we need to do more, we need to advance the kids, like we're not gonna be able to compete with other countries. And again, I'm coming from more of the American perspective. And I just don't think we can do that. Like, I think students are going to be like, I can't do anymore. Like, there needs to be a time where we just take like a collective exhale and come back to our community. And how do we do community building, focus on mental health? I think there needs to be more counselors in schools. I think there needs to be time in the day to take breaks. I work at the high school level. I'm all about there needs to be like recess time or breaks in the day. Even for high school students, they are overloaded with subjects and homework. I think there needs to be time built in the day for homework or working on a project or meeting with your teachers. This should not be all done outside of the school day. For both students and teachers, teachers have a lot of homework too. So the scheduling needs to change, and we need to really look at what matters. Certain subjects matter, certain requirements matter, but at the end of the day, we want to take care of children and we want to have them become good human beings. And so, caring about the environment, caring about each other and their community. How do we give back to our community? So I think there just needs to be a lot of mind shift before we really get down to the nitty gritty of like, okay, what are those actual like strategies, initiatives, programs that we can place in school?
That's great because, when it comes to these mass shootings that we've been seeing in the news, I mean, these kids were bullied in school the majority of the time. What do you think should happen with that situation in school with kids being bullied?
Yeah, great question. I think if we as adults spend more time being observant of our students, our children, and working to really give them support, that's going to help. Again, shoving more curriculum and testing and putting more on their plate is not going to help. So there needs to be, I think, more time in school where students are checking in with the counselor or they have an advisor. Like I'm an advisor at my school. Not all schools have that kind of program, but you have an advisor. You have that adult you go to and they see you, right? They see you, they know you. If they know something's off, they may say, hey, would you like to meet with me like during lunch? Or if you know that there's a little bit more of a challenge going on, like, hey, I think it would be really great to talk to the counselor, but like we can also have a conversation before that. Being more, connected with the parents. Like I had this on my podcast too. The parents and the teachers really need to work together as a partnership. So I think there just needs to be more transparency, more dialogue, and there needs to be teachers in either an advisor role or another role as an advisor, more counselors in school. We need to be talking to the kids more. One of the issues, at least in the public school system in America, not everywhere, but a lot of places, and I've taught in the public school system, when you have 35 students in front of you and you have 5 classes, so you may have 150 to 160 students on your roster, then teachers can't do that. They cannot do that type of work. So there needs to be some way to make smaller classes, to have less students on a roster for a teacher and more of that connection. I think also having, a program in school, like we have an advisory class once a week where you're talking with your group of students about these issues, about like, how do we take care of each other? How do we care about community? How do we learn from other perspectives? Another thing we have at my school, which I would love to see everywhere, I never had this at any other school, did not have that when I was in school, are affinity groups. And affinity groups are where students and teachers can be a part of a community that is part of their identity, right? So we have, women of color group, we have LGBTQ plus, we have adopted children, and they're, the teacher that runs that has adopted children or like they were adopted. Mental health awareness, that's one that I'm a part of. There's all these groups where it's a place where at least you feel like you have a home, even if you're in like part of like a big school or a big system, that you are, again, you're seen, right? There's people that see you, they care about you, they know your identity, they respect your identity. We need to do that with all identities, and I think, I don't know, I think we have isolated our children. I think we put them on devices and we put them out there on social media, and we're not tapping in. And like we're adults that need to be doing that. And I hear it from my students, like they feel like a lot of us are letting them down, like we're letting the generation down, and we need to be doing a lot more. And so we really have to have time to pay attention.
That's a great point. These kids need time, not just from the teachers, but from the parents as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, this is an awesome conversation. I'm so glad that you're on this show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we need to do another one of these, Jackie.
Yeah, I would love it.
How can my followers find out where you are on social media?
So I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but LinkedIn, I have a pretty big presence. I tend to post a few times a week. I post about my own podcast, The Teacher Story. And then I also have I'm co-founder of the Teacher Circle LinkedIn group. So on LinkedIn, it's Jacqueline Scully. You can search me and find me there. You can find the Teacher Circle on there if you want to join. On Instagram, it's just jackie.c.scully. I just have personal accounts for my other social media, and Facebook is the same. And you can also go on any podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon, and look for The Teacher Story. And if you're interested, if you are in the education world, you don't have to just come from the like K through 12, teacher position. I've done also interviews with higher ed, but parents and administrators and just voices that are there to share a story to support teachers. If you're interested, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can DM me, and it would be wonderful to have you on the show.
Great. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Thank you. This has been great.
Yes, absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Victory Circle Podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel.